This is Heritage Words, a podcast about the words we've inherited from our ancestors and the meaning they bring to our lives. Heritage Words is produced by the HUC Jewish Language Project, which raises awareness about Jewish ancestral diversity through the lens of language. I'm your host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Our guest today is Genevieve Okada Goldstone. Genevieve is an activist for children in public schools. She was born in LA and grew up in San Diego, where she lives now. Her Portuguese mother was from Hawaii, and her father is from Guam and is mixed Chamorro and Japanese. She has a BA from Berkeley and an MA in the psychology of parenthood from NYU, where she studied children's social emotional development in New York public schools. I first met Genevieve when she was in a PhD program in psychological anthropology at UCSD, and she was conducting fieldwork in LA, where I live, among Jewish converts of color across denominations. We invited her to this podcast to speak about her own experiences converting to Judaism, especially with a focus on language. Genevieve, welcome to Heritage Words.
Thanks, Sarah.
So I want to start with your names. Tell us about your names and what they mean to you.
My American names or my Hebrew name?
Both. Everything.
Okay. Genevieve is a French name, and I think the only connection to that is I was supposed to be a John when I was born, but I came out a girl, and so my parents didn't have a name, and they happened to drive past, or my dad did happen to drive past a St. Genevieve's church somewhere in the valley. I assume it's still there. And they're like, oh, that's kind of like Jonathan and Genevieve. Okay. So that's how I got my first name. It's a mouthful. I've given my kids much more normal names because it's a lot to grow up with. Though I know that's the trend now. Yeah, there's pros and cons to it. And I've kept professionally both my maiden name and my married name, which took me a while to even add my married name. I had both of my kids and then eventually was like, okay, I should tag along here. Um, because I'm proud of the fact that I'm part of this other family and heritage, and it's very much a Jewish name. But then I also wanted to acknowledge um, my birth culture and heritage. So I use that so people know right off the bat, like, oh, there's a story there. Right, three French, Japanese, and a Jewish name. Like, okay, there's a story there. And I've given both of my children the same middle and last name as myself. So already from their names, um, you also know that there's a story.
And so is Okada from Japanese?
Hmm.
And is Goldstone changed from Goldstein, something like that?
I assume so. I've asked them. They don't seem to know. That my husband is from South Africa originally, grew up in Israel, but from South Africa. So I assume at some point it became anglicized.
Okay. So I'm assuming his family was originally from Lithuania.
Hmm.
Okay. Common in South African Jewish communities. Okay. And what about your Hebrew name?
Shoshana Rivka. Shoshana because my grandmother, my mom's mom, her name is Rose. And even though it's not the direct translation to Rose, it's not Varda, or Varda, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, I just liked the name Shoshana better, and I know it's sort of equivalent to Rose. And then my mother actually picked the name Rivka, my non-Jewish mother, who was very much Jewish in a lot of ways, uh, because my conversion process was a very long one. It took probably 15 years. And by the time by was actually finishing it, it was shortly after the terrorist attack in Mumbai, where the Chabad rabbi and Rebbitzin were killed. And the Rebbitzins' name was Rivka, and my mom really wanted to honor her. So that's where the Rivka comes from.
That's beautiful. And by the way, my oldest daughter's middle name is Rose, and her Hebrew middle name is Shoshana.
Oh, there you go.
And I think that's beautiful that your Hebrew names are after two people, one important in your life and one I assume you didn't even know, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So now let's turn to your parents. We said that their ancestry is Portuguese, Japanese, and Chamorro, specifically the Guamanian variety. And I'm assuming that's a common combination in Hawaii. Tell
Right.
us which of your ancestors moved to Hawaii and where did your parents meet?
Uh, both my mom's side of the family, I think, came from Madeira, um, and maybe one or two generations before my mom. So they were all still speaking Portuguese up until her generation. Um, and we're just part of that wave of Portuguese immigrants that are now have a lasting history as part of Hawaiian culture.
And
And my,
to clarify, Madeira is an island off the coast of
yes,
Morocco that is part of Portugal, right?
yes.
And they spoke Portuguese there?
hmm
Okay. So which of your ancestors migrated from there?
I'm not sure how many steps back, but at least great great grandparents.
Okay.
And then my father's side, native Chamorro, except for his father or grandfather. I think his grandfather uh, immigrated from Japan, and then married a Chamorro woman and had kids. Um, so there were certain names and words that lingered, like Japanese names and words that lingered in the Chamorro side, but definitely he became part of the Chamorro culture and family life there. Um,
In Guam?
yeah,
Okay. And then how did your Guamanian ancestors get to, wait, where did your parents meet?
they met in Guam.
Oh, they met in
So,
Guam. Okay.
yeah, so at a certain point, I think in high school, my mom's family moved to Guam, and then a few years later, I don't know how many years later, she met my father.
Got it. And then when did they move to LA?
Shortly after they were married, um, I have an older sister, Naomi, who was born in Guam, and then I was born about 10 years later in Los Angeles. So, and they'd lived there for at least a few years before I was born.
Okay. And growing up, what languages did you hear in your home?
Only English, um, because both of my parents are from that generation, um, especially in the Guamanian and Hawaii with the like the kind of at the time, you didn't want your kids. You wanted them to assimilate. So even though they had their native languages, it was all about like, this is the language that the grandparents speak and gossip in, and you know, they all go inside the house, and then the kids go out to the yard and play. And this is our like private time to gossip and talk. So neither one of them learned that. It's my understanding that it was at the time very, very much institutionally discouraged to teach tomorrow. Now there's a resurgence of it in Guam, but that was not something that was something that was looked down on, is my understanding. So there wasn't any kind of concerted effort to teach it. So again, some names for family members or dogs and words, you know, sprinkled in here and there throughout my childhood, but definitely it was English or for my mom, some pidgin English sometimes.
Okay, so let's talk about those words, those heritage words that were passed down the generations to you. Tell us about some of those.
Uh, there's not too many. I was trying to like come up with a good list, but I remember my first word that I knew was different is we had a dog when I was little named Shintaro, which is a very, very just Japanese name, just straight up Japanese name. And I remember like knowing that nobody else had a dog named Shintaro. Um, so that's my first like recognition of something different about our family. And then kind of like in a lot of your other interviews on the podcast, the words that I mostly came up with are for private parts. Um, And it's funny because in preparing for this, I Googled the words just to make sure like is the my memory of the definition of it right? I wanted to double check, and it took me to a Facebook page where there's this Guamanian movement to teach kids the proper names of private parts, so that way, if kids have anything unsavory to report, they are using the right words and we're empowering them. Just like in English, right? We want to nowadays it's en vogue to teach kids the proper names of things, so there's no um, uh, I don't know the right word. The no awkwardness about it. So I grew up with the proper names in Chamorro. So Punkit was one of them, and that means vagina. So my mom would always say, "Go wash your punkit," right? Or when you're taking a shower, because girls it requires a little extra effort for that. So that was always something she emphasized with us.
That,
Related.
this is not the first time that the word vagina has come up on our podcast.
No, it is not. Um, And then related to that, doggin, which means your butt or your tushy. So like wipe your doggin, wash your doggin, pinch somebody's doggin. That was something that was said a lot. Um, then sort of the cutesy names come in. One of them is chubut, which I think just means like chubby or fat. Um, and the thing about Chamorro is there's a lot of Spanish influence in the language, and then just because of the American influence, there's also some just English words kind of sprinkled in. So things are kind of hybridized in the words anyway. So I'm not sure if chubut is because I think it does mean chubby, like if that's just or cutesy, if that has anything to do with the word chubby, or if it just is by chance. Um, then what else? My nickname as a kid was Nenny Goat. Um, so goat, obviously just regular goat, English word. But Nenny in Chamorro means like baby or cutesy little baby. And from what I could find out, I think it's related to the Spanish like nena, like cutesy little girl. So now I get it why I was always called that, but that was my nickname growing up. Um, and then the other word that was like super common was maca peas. So you wake up in the morning, you have some yellow stuff in your eye, and then mom would say, like, clean out your maca peas, wipe your maca peas. And I had no idea this was not an English word until probably seventh or eighth grade. And I remember going to a girlfriend's house, like I very clearly remember, and spending the night and like saying, "Oh, I have maca peas, I have to wipe them." And she's looking at me and she's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Maca peas." And I just kept saying it. And she's looking and she's like, "That is not a word." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And I had no clue. And then I learned, some people call it sleep or eye gunk or whatever. And and then flash forward maybe 20 years later, honestly, I looked it up, and that was also kind of a bastardization of the actual Hawaiian word, which is makapia pia, which means like I do, or eye moisture. So that my mom made it cutesy, I guess, for us.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's from a Hawaiian word, maka, say it again.
Makapia pia.
Maka pia pia. Okay.
Mhm.
And how did you figure that out eventually when you looked, how did you look it up?
I don't remember how I looked it up. I must have been maybe in preparation for my sister's wedding. She had little Hawaiian phrases put onto candle holders at each table at her wedding. So in Hawaiian, like little Hawaiian phrases about like blessing and good luck and love. And it maybe at some point I was looking up some of those phrases and then I came across, oh, makapia pia. I'm like, oh, that's where it comes from. It must have been around that time because I don't know why else I would have randomly been looking up that word.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
That's interesting. So why do you think your sister decided to do that at her wedding?
My sister is, or one of my sisters, the sister that I'm talking about, I have four, is covered in tattoos that recognize our family heritage. Um, which is tattoos are a big part of island culture too. Um, I just ethnic pride and also weddings are a time of blending the two families and acknowledging your history. And I think it was just to include that. And, we still talk a lot about my grandma Rose and Grandpa David and what it was like for them to, when they got married and how poor they were. And they took a break to have their wedding and then went back to work, right? So it was like that's how tight they were in free time. So, we still talk about those stories. We all still go back to Hawaii or Guam fairly regularly and have family there that they mostly come here and visit. So it's still very much a part of our identity and connection. So the more family lives in Guam now. I think there might be some extended family in Hawaii, but most of the family is now in Guam.
Mm. And how many times have you been to Hawaii and Guam?
Guam, I've only been when I was younger. Um, I have not yet gone back as an adult. Hawaii, I don't know, a handful of times at least. So we were there a couple years ago.
And when you've gone to those places, have you learned any of the languages there?
Uh, from Guam, no. From Hawaii, actually, it was just last summer we went. Uh, it's not the words, but I have to say, like, um, so, so thinking of White Lotus, season one White Lotus, and the whole criticism of the tourist culture. I don't like staying in Airbnbs. It just creeps me out. I'd rather know that there's cleaning staff. So we always stay at a hotel, and I feel like very awkward about that because like I have this like deep family connection, but at the same time I'm part of the tourist coming there. So whenever we go, though, I always make sure we go and find local food or go to the local coffee shop or the local parks or the local beaches, not just the beach at the hotel. And, I ask, if you want to just go and get a nice cheap plate lunch, where would you go? Like, where are you not going to send the tourists? So I'll ask the gardener or the security person. So I definitely make that effort while I'm there. Um, so it's less about words and more of wanting to connect to like everyday people and eat the food that I grew up eating. That's harder. I mean, that's so hard to get in San Diego, honestly. There's a lot of Hawaiians here now, and Guamanians. But just feeling closer to like an everyday Hawaiian and kind of imagining what my mom's like she always complained about living on a tiny island and how like suffocating that was. And it's so tiny and you know everybody and everybody knows your business. And she never loved that. So kind of going there and getting a sense of it that literally everybody does know everybody. If your friend, one person at the coffee shop, they're going to invite you to the party the next night at somebody's house and they're having a barbecue. And the next day you're going to go on a hike where they take you to this waterfall where they don't take tourists. So I like doing that kind of exploration.
Okay. So the heritage words you mentioned are mostly child-directed speech, right? Things you heard as a child from, I guess, both of your parents or different words from different parents or grandparents, right?
We didn't see my grandparents too much. I don't know who said it more, my mom or my dad, but it was definitely the normal words that were always said by both of them. Because in checking with my sister about before coming today, uh, yeah, there were no other words ever used. Like
Mhm.
I'm sure I was shocked when I learned the word vagina, that there was another word for it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
just no idea.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think that's pretty common, especially for private parts, for purposes of euphemism, not using a word from the local language because it sounds too crass, but if you use a word from a different language, it sounds better.
Hmm.
So tell us about that dog name, Shintaru. Is that what you
Hmm.
said?
Hmm.
Tell us about that. What does it mean?
I don't know. Sorry, I didn't look that one up. I don't know what it means. I know what Okada means.
What is it?
Okada means rice paddy on a hill. I guess those are the characters. So yeah.
Um, so I want to ask now about your conversion. Tell us about the process of getting interested in Judaism and converting.
Uh, so both sides of my family vaguely Catholic, not super religious. At least we weren't raised super religious. Grew up in rural San Diego, where our school district was, I think, one of the first to be taken over by Christian conservatives, where they wanted to teach creationism and stop teaching evolution. And there, I remember CNN descending on school board meetings, and there just being a lot of discussion in the community about religion and public schools. And as a teenager, I follow this and I kept thinking, well, wow, okay, I don't have those beliefs where I want to not learn evolution, and that my family doesn't have those beliefs, but what do I believe? So that set me off on this religious, spiritual journey. And I went to church with some friends and explored that. I got really into Buddhism, but Buddhism was something I could do alone in my room on my own. And it was calming, but it didn't click. And then I went to Berkeley, and first semester, I met a nice Jewish girl from LA. And we were talking one day about spirituality. And she's like, I think you would like Judaism. Come with me to Hillel. And so after class, she just walked me up the hill to the Berkeley Hillel. And I remember meeting the rabbi, but then going to, because this is before widespread internet use, and definitely before social media, like they had a wall of flyers for different events. And I literally took every single flyer off the wall and just went to everything. Even where I had no background whatsoever in anything they were talking about. And I'd go and there'd be only three or four other people and they're looking at me like, who is this random girl who knows nothing, just sitting with us? And I just started learning. And then through that, going to service, no, going to Friday night dinners. And then I had a friend, I lived in the co-ops there, who was Jewish, and he was going to the Orthodox synagogue in Berkeley. And so he started inviting me. So I would go with him on Friday nights, and then we'd always have a place for dinner. And just, I don't know, it was immediate. It was like, okay, yeah, this is it. It's not about doing something alone in your room. It's about community and connection and um, a lot of ritual, which the Catholic part of me like connected with. Um, and I loved all the people I met, and I really liked the rabbi. And so I started this Orthodox conversion. And then I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Was studying with the rabbi there, was very much living a mostly Orthodox practice. Then my junior year of college, I went to Israel on my own for several weeks. And this was back again before internet, where you go with somebody's phone number or an address and like, okay, go and like, go find Jeff Seidel at the at the Kotel, right? Or go do, this person in Tel Aviv. And back then Tel Aviv was quiet on Shabbat. So that's how long ago it was. Um, and that was amazing, and I loved it, and it was really intense to travel around by myself for several weeks. But in the process, I realized, oh wow, this is not just a religion. This is like an intense history and lots of different cultures and this really complicated political situation. And here I am, this 21-year-old multiracial girl who's just starting out in life. Like, I feel like I need to like take a breath, make sure I like know who I am myself and fully comfortable in that before I commit even more to Judaism. And then what's funny is I ended up living in New York for 10 years, a very Jewish 10 years in New York, dating, going to services sometimes, definitely celebrating holidays with friends, um, but not observant like I had been. And then I came back to San Diego to do my PhD program. And in the process of that, like in my mid 30s, it was a coming home literally. Um, and it also made me realize, okay, I need to close the loop on this. Like it hasn't gone away, this desire. Um, so I started looking into a conversion again here in San Diego. And this is the crazy part. So I was probably 34, 30, maybe 33. I didn't know there was anything other than Orthodox Judaism. That was the only thing I was introduced to. And even looking back and knowing Hillel had different services before dinner in different rooms, like you could go to whatever, I just thought it was style. I just thought it was preference. I had no idea there was this institutional background to it. Um, so I looked into Orthodox conversion here. And what I quickly learned is a lot had changed in those 15 years, and it had become much more administrative and bureaucratic and a lot more complicated. And I wasn't willing to go through with that and compromise certain values and to feel so like have so much suspicion put on me. That's what it felt like. And then I found out about conservative Judaism and Reform Judaism and started exploring that. And conservative Judaism felt like the closest to Orthodox Judaism. So you could have all of the traditional practice, but then have this egalitarian aspect to it, which had never bothered me. But I did appreciate it as a modern woman. But it wasn't the primary thing. It was more of the observance, the traditional prayers without the same gatekeeping that I felt like the Orthodox were demanding.
You ended up converting with which movement?
Conservative,
Conservative. Okay.
yeah.
And
But then I
it,
did ask a Reform rabbi to be on my bet din because that, even though it was a conservative conversion, and I liked the idea of like, why are we all separated? So why not have like I don't have anything against Reform people, like I Reform Judaism. So I wanted to have that as part of the experience. I don't know. And for some way for me, it felt like more inclusive and connected to the larger Jewish community and not just like one denomination.
that makes sense. And so you were involved with Jewish communities in several US cities and in Israel. In all of those experiences, how did you learn the language of Judaism, the Hebrew and Yiddish words that are so common in the English of American Jews?
So listening to people, so listening at those dinners and services, and it was definitely the what's the right phrase? The Ashkenazi or Yiddish kind of pronunciation where it has the S sound at the end, or Shabbos and Good Shabbos. Um, that was the norm at that synagogue at Congregation Beth Israel in Berkeley. And then also my friend, I had one good friend who really was like my mentor. And so I remember very specifically learning um, like Friday night prayers, like blessing over candles or learning the Shema and like just being on the phone with him. And he would sound it out and I'd write it and then I'd say it back to him or he'd sing it and then I'd sing it back to him. So I very much had good tutors. Um, and And even with that, I didn't understand that there was a different modern Hebrew pronunciation. I did take Hebrew in college, and so I obviously learned how to read the letters and it ends differently, but it didn't click for me later that there was this tradition of or not tradition, this other way of pronouncing, this cultural aspect to it. It didn't click with me because to me they were just fully separate anyway. Um, so I've definitely personally switched over to the modern Hebrew pronunciation just in our regular prayers and readings or whatever around the house because my husband did grow up in Israel and that's like it grates on him to hear the other pronunciation. Like he needs to hear the modern Hebrew. So like he wants to hear that T sound. So um, so I've switched over. So I don't say Good Shabbos. He would not be happy with that. So everything's Shabbat Shalom and like so that's where I've landed now that I've been married and where what my kids are hearing.
Does your husband speak English or Hebrew to the kids?
He speaks English um, because, and this was a big debate slash argument when we first had kids, because what a beautiful thing to be able to have your kids be bilingual and to have somebody else who speaks another language fluently. However, because he is South African, his mother tongue is English, right? So all of the cutesy things that when he holds a baby, he wants to say it in English because that's what he heard. So for him, it just felt very unnatural to speak Hebrew to a baby. He's fine, having discussions about medicine or politics or whatever in Hebrew, but when it comes to a baby, it's English or honestly, one of the native South African languages. So like I know some like songs that like I'm sure the nannies sang to his mom and to him as a baby because that's what I heard my husband and his mom sing when they came into our house. So Tula Tu, Tula Sana, whatever. So there's like
Do
I know those songs.
you know what language, which language?
I don't I don't offhand.
Okay, wow, that's so interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and so in the South African, does he speak with a South African accent?
Nope, he sounds American.
Okay. So how old was he when he moved to America?
He moved here when he was, well, first they moved to Australia, and then they moved here for 3 years. And then he moved to Israel when he was 10, and he was there through the army pretty much. Um, so I guess he was here enough during that critical language time where you pick up the accent, that, yeah, he just sounds American.
Got it. Yeah, we have had another podcast guest who was from multiple places, Australia, South Africa, and Israel.
Yes. I
And
loved hearing her accent. I was like, I can hear all of it and it feels so like home.
yeah, so that was Sarah Sassoon. And so your husband's parents, do they also live in San Diego now?
His dad does not. His mom does live here.
Okay, and so does she also speak to the children in South African English?
Just the songs, sh when they were babies, that was mostly it. Because again, as probably having a nanny in South Africa, that's what they sang to her. So that was in a way a mother tongue. But now she speaks in English. Um, my kids do know a little bit of Hebrew, but they don't hear it enough to be conversational. So just like my parents, my husband and my mother-in-law, when they don't want the kids to know what's going on, they'll speak in Hebrew.
Mhm.
That's not going to last for very long because they can pick up enough of the context. But uh, at least they check each other to like stop the conversation. They can at least do that in Hebrew. Um, so yeah.
And then are there any Yiddish heritage words in your husband's family that you've heard in your current community?
Not too many that not any that I can think of. I'm sure if I spent a day with my mother-in-law, there'd be certain words. I mean, definitely all the food stuff and descriptions of things she might say, but my husband doesn't say them, so I don't hear them very often. Um, Also, my husband's stepfather is Israeli as well, so there's just more of that Israeli influence and pronunciation of things around. Um, so when my mother-in-law is around her extended family, South African family, a lot of the cousins have moved here in the past 5 to 10 years, like cousins of my husband's generation. So when they all are around, um, maybe there's certain words that they say, but it's just not a regular enough thing for me that it's normal for me.
Mhm.
So
Got it. Okay. Do you use any of your heritage words with your children?
no, I do not. They know my nickname because my sister still uses it. Um, but
Nickname.
the nanny goat, the baby
Oh,
goat nickname.
okay.
Um, but no, because I took conversion to Judaism very seriously, and um, it's not just a religion; it's also this culture. And while I'm still very proud and connected to my birth culture, it's a diluted cultural influence, right? Because it's Japanese through the lens of Guam and Hawaii is already this multi-Asian mixture of things. And so ev my mom is Portuguese white, but I always think of her as Asian because all of the cultural traditions and foods in our house were more Asian influence, like very much a Hawaiian, multiracial, multi-Asian kind of thing. So, um, I still very feel very deeply connected to that, but I'm raising kids who I want to feel fully, um, fully Jewish. Like whatever awkwardness that I still feel as a Jew of color, in Jewish spaces, my kids can mostly pass as not having any Asian in them. You kind of have to know to see it. Um, Not that it would matter, but I just, whatever I could to help underscore and what's the word? Really just reinforce their Jewish identity. Um, that's what I've chosen to do. And as the mom, like I'm with them more, I have more control over those words. So I definitely have used more Hebrew with my kids than my husband even has. So my kids know all of the cutesy Hebrew words like Hamud or Hamudi or my Tinuk or Tinuk Shali, right? So like they know all that stuff from me, not because my husband says it. So I've tried to like where I can like sprinkle that in. So some part of Hebrew language like resonates with them as a mother tongue. So even though I do not speak it fluently, I want them to feel that connection. And I felt the responsibility of giving it to them because it wasn't going to come from anywhere else.
Hmm. So it sounds like you intentionally replaced the heritage words that you grew up with, the child-directed speech, with words from Hebrew.
Yes.
Wow. And how did you learn which words to use in that way? Had you heard other people speaking to children in Hebrew?
Um, I mean, I studied Hebrew, so I knew some of the words, but just yeah, just hearing it, asking my husband a lot of questions. I'm sure I annoyed him a lot in the beginning of how do you say this and how do you do that? And what do I have the right pronunciation right? Did I use the right pronouns? Like checking things with him a lot. Um, and then yeah, probably just hearing it. Uh, I feel like I've encountered more Israelis now as an adult than I did in college. So I definitely hear more modern Hebrew now. So what's funny is like going to like a hotel in New York and like holding my baby and then having the people, looking at me start speaking in Hebrew, like, oh, look at that cute baby, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll be like, thank you, and like respond to what they're saying about my kid in Hebrew because it's like I understand what you're saying. Um, so I guess even just in those casual moments of hearing how people um, are using it, just reinforces sort of the academic language acquisition that I had.
Hmm. Yeah. Can you tell us about how your experience with conversion compared to those of the people that you studied for your research?
Most of the people that I interviewed got connected to Judaism primarily through a partner. Um, well, there's some caveats there. Within the Latino Hispanic community, not so much. That was more of a family thing, a community thing. But um, for African Americans, for the Asians, for the white converts, it generally, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but a good portion were because of a romantic partner. So conversion was never a forced thing. People always think like, oh, you just converted for somebody. No, you don't just convert for somebody. There's too much work involved to do that. But it's your introduction. So my introduction was not through any kind of romantic partner. Uh, so I'd say that's a bigger difference. I mean, there's definitely exceptions, but yeah, that's the short answer.
And then what about with regard to language? Do you feel that the way that you learned Hebrew words and blessings and prayers was similar to how other people you studied learned those words and prayers?
Probably because you learn from community, you learn from your in-laws, right? The people that you're around and having Shabbat dinner with, and you um, learn to recite the blessings over the candles and the wine from the mother-in-law or your future mother-in-law. They're with you. So I think, yeah, that personal connection, the community that you're in. Um, Most of the people, I don't know if any actually that I interviewed did not take Hebrew as just a regular language course. They did their conversion courses and then just kind of learn the prayers and like required Hebrew along the way. Um, yeah,
In your conversion, did you ever take an official class to prepare for conversion?
did I? Do I even remember at this point? I think I might have. I think I probably did. I think there might have been a small class at the synagogue. Um, but I think that the reason why it's not standing out to me is because, again, my background was in Orthodox Judaism, and I'd already had learned to keep kosher, had learned to toivel dishes, whatever. Just I had a very deep knowledge and practice, and I'd already been to Israel, and I'd already read lots of books, and was immersed enough in the community and the culture that taking the class was like Judaism light. Because it didn't teach the prayers because you have to go to services all the time and learn the prayers. It didn't yeah, it was just like touching on a lot of the different topics. It was probably an 18 course um class, I'm assuming, because most of them are outside of the Orthodox. So yeah, I just it wasn't the thing that solidified it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if in the conversion classes that the people you researched participated in, if they covered language. I mean, you mentioned you learned to toivel dishes. Even that word toivel from Hebrew and Yiddish
Right.
is something that you learn through exposure. But I wonder if some of the classes explicitly teach, here are some words that you're going to need when you are participating in Jewish communities as part of Jewish English, not teaching the Hebrew language specifically.
Right. I think there was some of that. I mean, it's just part of the process of learning that certain words are introduced because it's all foreign, right? If you're coming in with like this, like maybe you've had some Jewish friends, but like really learning about Judaism, it's all new and I'm sure very intimidating. I don't recall like a glossary being handed or things like that. Though there might have been, or maybe there are now. That would be really fun. That would be fun to act actually like a group of converts to what are some words that you've learned that are super unusual that didn't come up in your class or they've come up in conversation like that. That would be a super fun book or like booklet to put together.
Yes,
Um,
I love that. What would be some of the words that immediately pop to mind that you would include in that list?
um, I am so not a good person to ask that question. I think just because my exposure was I was so young and it was so much one stream of Judaism. Um, and it was this like unfolding over many years and many different contexts that I can't even fully place where I picked up certain words. I would imagine that I think something that people should point out, if it's not already obvious, is if you're in a place where they are doing that S sound instead of the T sound, like explaining that history. I think people say it and do it without explaining it. And so, like, if you're starting to sound the letters out, I'm sure it's really confusing. I don't remember asking this about it to anybody, but I'm sure it's really confusing. Be like, why there's a tet here? Why, or a topic, like, why are they not making that sound? So, I don't recall that ever being like explicitly laid out. Um, So maybe more of those types of things of like why you're hearing it in different contexts, and then just like peeling back there the cultural background of where those pronunciations and sort of even just like the foods that go along with it, right? So having kugel and cholent in a certain place, but then as go to someplace else and that's all like Israeli salads and pita. It just even that shows where a community is coming from or what they're emphasizing.
So it sounds like you're recommending that Intro to Judaism courses or potential conversion courses should cover the diversity of the Jewish world, and especially with regard to language and culture and food and all that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I know at least at AJU, I know they had revamped the program, their curricula a while back. I'm assuming it's changed even more, so that very well could be in there. But at the time when I did my research, so 10 years ago, um, I think it was a very tiny part. Like they mention it, but you know, 'cause everyone likes to talk about like the Indian Jews and the Chinese Jews, and there's this connection, um, and Jews are everywhere. But to go into the finer details of it. Yeah, that would be really interesting. And also then it would make more sense why you're seeing this like because I grew up with you know in the 80s and 90s with a certain idea of what American Jewish was. And it was very much influenced by Hollywood, where it was very much this Yiddish, Ashkenazi influence. And um, I had no clue about Sephardic Mizrahi Jews or that world. And yeah, I mean, you get more of it in LA, you feel it more, so maybe people are more in tune. But if you're just kind of paying attention to popular culture really only shows that type of Judaism. So, emphasizing that there's these other types that are equally beautiful and with their own deep traditions that are very different. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
would
that
be
makes a
amazing.
lot of sense. I think we have a lot of work to do in changing the cultural norms, and Hollywood cultural products can also change, right? But also changing Intro to Judaism classes, and our the Jewish English lexicon, which the Jewish Language Project runs, has a list of words. It's a crowdsourced dictionary of words from Hebrew, Yiddish, Latino, Judeo-Arabic, and many other languages that Jews use while speaking English. And there are definitions and recordings. And when we added the recordings, we were specifically thinking of people converting to Judaism and Jew-adjacent non-Jews. And that was supposed to be and is a good way for them to learn the language of the community. But each word has multiple pronunciations and spellings. Like we would have Shabbat and Shabbos. And so people need to learn how to figure out which one they want to use of those
Hmm.
variants.
Yep, that's amazing. I didn't realize that you had that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, we're almost out of time. I just want to leave the last question open to you for any other thoughts you have about ancestry, language, identity, community, conversion, or anything we've talked about.
In preparing to speak with you, I was like, oh, I don't know if I have enough. And I realize it's because, like I mentioned, I've really de-emphasized my own background to underscore my husband slash the Jewish side because it's not, again, it's not just a religion. It's also this like culture, this heritage, this peoplehood. And I just want my kids to feel fully confident in that identity. And not that they don't know that mama's, you know, Asian, they know that about themselves. So for like example, on Shabbat dinner, instead of having a course of gefilte fish, we always have sushi. So that's like our little tradition. So that's something I do to try to just underscore like my background. Um, but it's obviously like really watered down compared to what I grew up with. So I was just thinking like I am an example of how like one day my kids will, unless they marry other multiracial Jews, um, I'll be forgotten. Like my background will just be this interesting side note that somebody one day does on Ancestry.com, like finds out, oh, you had this, mixed race Jewish hair ancestor. I feel like I'm part of that disappearance, maybe. So that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. So yeah, maybe I need to do more of even just sharing those few words, private words for private parts with my kids. Maybe that's something I can pass on. Um, and when we do eat the food, we do go visit places, we do talk about, family stories. But I was thinking like it's definitely not what has been my main focus. And I don't know if that says something about my own insecurity of my own Jewish identity, my own worries about their potential insecurity about their Jewish identities. I have to think on that more. But yeah, now I got to ask other converts how they're doing it because I wonder if I'm more like some others or if other people are bringing their backgrounds in more than I am. Like they're specifically non-Jewish backgrounds. It's one thing to bring in another Jewish culture and merge the two, but to bring in something that's very clearly coded as not Jewish, yeah, how people are managing that and thinking through it.
Mhm. Well, also in this season of Heritage Words, we will be interviewing Michael Twitty, an African American Jew, and he talks about that, and hopefully we'll have other interviews with other people who have converted or have multiple Jewish heritages, and so we'll see how they're doing it.
Looking
Well,
forward to it. It's awesome.
yeah, thank you. Genevieve, thank you so much for these wonderful conversations. And we look forward to seeing how you and your family's identities develop.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to be part of this.
Heritage Words is a partnership of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Language Project and HUC Connect, supported by tax-deductible donations from listeners like you. I'm the producer and host, Sarah Bunin Benor. Kyle Elbaz Fingerhut is assistant producer. Avishay Artsy is editor. And Talia Ehrenberg is video editor. The music is from Maurice El Medioni's French and Algerian Arabic album Café Oran, featuring the Klezmatics David Krakauer and Frank London, courtesy of Piranha Records. This podcast is one of the many ways the Jewish Language Project raises awareness about the diversity of the Jewish people and the phenomenon of heritage words. We also have online crowdsourced dictionaries where you can find the words mentioned on the podcast. We post Jewish Word of the Week and fun facts on social media, and we offer free educational materials and exhibits that you can visit online or display in a synagogue, museum, or community center. Contact us about our live taping opportunities. Looking for gifts for Shabbat dinners and Passover seders? Check out our whimsical multilingual t-shirts, tote bags, stickers, and aprons. You can find all this content and donate, volunteer, or sign up for our email list at jewishlanguages.org. Thank you, merci mucho, soch boshi, rahmat, shukran, todaraba, Ashenim Dank.